So welcome to Bunny's Designs. I'm playing with my derwent watercolour pencils, which I've had for quite a number of years. But I'm using them in a slightly different way. I'm using them from a paper palette and mixing colours so I can get some nice watercolour effects. But this paper doesn't really like it because it's quite thin paper, is this. So I've got to be a bit careful. I've touched that now and I can feel it may not take another layer of building up watercolour, which is what I wanted to do, is to build up some kind of nice dark shadows. Um, so I know what I wanted to do with it, but it probably will not do that, because it will destroy the paper before I get the colour built up on there that I want. And so the only other way really is to use pastels in this book. I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get a build-up of colour without completely destroying the book. Because it's not a watercolour paper. Now, if I could print this out, in fact, I could possibly, well, I can if I wanted to, is photocopy this onto a piece of watercolour paper, and then I could do that. But of course, this is a colour book, and it's just going through. It's just going through because I've re-wet it and re-wet it and re-wet it, and yeah, so it's not going to work. So it will not work. What we have to do is we have to take the colour that we were thinking about, which I think it was Crimson Lake. But I'll just try Rose Madder Carmine, I beg your pardon. So we'll try Madder Carmine. Yep, that's too pink. It's definitely this one. And we'll have to use it as we wanted to originally. So what we need to do is, yeah, because it's just going to completely trash the page and it'll disintegrate. So you can use the pencils like so that means that that's why my method works and other things don't. Is what you need to do is to scratch a little bit of watercolour. That's probably a little bit too big, is that one? And then you take your damp rigger, activate it, and then you push it up to get some really nice watercolour effects. So you have to use it like this. It will not really work any other way. So this is a bit paler, so get that going. So we scratch the colour in. This paper will just not do anything else. And then we can activate that really nice colour. And then we need this underneath here. A bit too wet that. This paper will not take too much water. It is, because they're watercolour effects, yeah. Yes, Nina, it is. Yeah, so if there's two ways we can do this. With the watercolour pencils, the derwents, we can blend as a pencil, and we can use a little bit of colour and scratch like I normally do with a damp rigger. But definitely the watercolour effect, where you want to build up lots of colours, it's not advisable on this paper. But what you could do is you could put this in your photocopier and print it out with you can get some quite nice good quality sketchbook paper that will take this would go in. This is Dalerani's graduate sketchbook paper. They're about £1, but I think the A4 size, which is about 8.5 by 11 3/4, I think that one is about a couple of pounds, and you get probably 10-20 sheets. Oh, actually, that's what you need to do. Look, you could do that if you wanted to. I've used this for watercolour, so it actually will take a little bit of watercolour. I could do that actually. I could do that, but I'm glad I've rescued this, because again, you can still feel that that paper is ruffled, but I still love that effect. It's a really nice watercolour effect. It's just not. I wanted to use watercolour, and of course you can't do that in a colour book unless you do it this way. And that's really why I invented watercolouring. It's using a rigger. It's using a damp rigger, and that's why it works. You can't use really watercolour any other way unless you damage your paper. So you have a damp rigger, activate the colour, and then manipulate it to become paler. And then the top one will be very pale then. And then you must leave that to dry, because it will not take any more colour at the moment, any more water. And just put some colour in. The advantage of this is that you could do all your colour with your paper, and then you could take the book out with all the pencil actually scratched in, and leave the pencils at home, and then it would be like the old-fashioned magic watercolouring. You could just do this little bit here outside or somewhere else, and I should have left that. So you can use it like that. Well, this particular book, if you've got any questions, pop them in caps, and then you know I know you're talking to me. This particular book is actually a copy from this from 1670 some, I think she said 1679 issued her first publication of insects. So that's what they worked in those days. The publication is in watercolors. I think it's for you can use pastels, but I do like these pale colors. And it works really well as watercoloring, but I wanted to use it a different way. But this is the easiest way to do it, is to scratch. This is Derwent watercolor pencil. Is to scratch the tiniest bit of colour, and you don't get any lines. You just get a really soft watercolor effect. It's a bit blurred actually. So that's what I'll be doing. So I'm going to be using those. I think that other one's a bit bigger, but I will use it for the leaves, for the green leaves, because it's a bigger space. So I'll zoom in, and I'm going to use. We can get rid of these pencils now because we just need that one for there. So it means you only need one colour, and you're manipulating it to make different tones and shades. And I can't remember if it's Crimson Lake or if it's Rose Madder, so I'm just going to have to do a bit of a scratch test again when I was working. You see, they're very similar. One's a darker purple, one's a pinky purple. So just let me find my brush. I think, I didn't know which one it is. Yeah, it's the darker of the two. So it's number 20. So that looks slightly different colours, and that's got pink around it. That one's a pinky red. So we just put a little scratch of colour. So it's quite good, you don't waste any colour by doing it this way. Whoopsie. I don't have a damp rigger, I only damp baby wipe. The beauty of this way is it's very easy and it's very quick. I still don't think that's the same pink, but you can manipulate the colour around because it's watercolour. So you just want a little bit of colour around. And because I don't have any points, I don't have any harsh lines, so it completely dissolves. So they're very, very nice to work with, and very easy and quick. But I did have my doubts about the paper originally, I have to say. And I think I like. But at least this way you can get some nice watercolour effects without the water, but it's a boring way to do things. I do this all the time. The pencils, I think they're about. I found them for £70. I think English pounds. But as I say, I'd forgotten you can blend with them, so you can use them as a pencil, or you can use them as a watercolor. But they're very easy to use, and I use this them in my little watercolor book, so I can leave them at home. This is why they've never been used, because I use this constantly. Um, and again, you could use this. We have Rose Madder here. I think it was Rose Madder I was using, or Madder Carmine. I can't remember now. And you just get a little bit on the end, which is the same as doing scratching the other way. And we want a petal, so we've got this one. So you start where it's darkest and you just keep moving about and manipulating that colour. So you don't even need the pencils really. So again, I really like that as well. So this way, but again, it's got to be just a damp brush. You can't use a water brush. You couldn't use an ordinary fat water brush, because the minute you touch it, it floods, and it will not take it. Most colour books will not take that. But as I say, this is why this worked. But it's taken me a long time to get to this stage, but it does work quite well, and your pages are very flat. But again, you can't get the backgrounds with this. That's why I use the pastels, to get that lovely, perfect, flat colour. It's the pastels that give you that background. I couldn't get that because even though it's a little bit thicker than this one, in fact it's twice as thick, I cannot get a background like that, so I will use the pastels for this just off-white colour for a background, and just use a little blending tool. So I was thinking about buying some more pencils, even though I have the full set and I love them. I want to do a comparison of what they are now, because mine must be at least 20-25 years old. They must be 20 years old. It's a long time since they've made this blue colour. And the original ones before that were silver. I don't have any next to me. What I do have are these Caran d'Ache Prismalo, and I've got a set of these, and I have them in this book here, and I don't like them. They're not as vibrant, and yet I've seen a comparison that they are supposed to be better than Derwent watercolours. But I've got my Prismalo here, look, and I don't really like them. They're okay. Let me have a look, see if I can do a thingy. I can do a tester. Yeah, I mean, they're quite nice. They're quite nice. So I might do a comparison actually. And I wonder if you could blend with those, because they have that little water brush. Anything that has that water brush mark on it there, little water brush, I put in my little colour book. So I've got professional watercolours, I've got peerless, I've got graphic tints and tones, I've got the Derwent watercolours, I've now got my pastels in there, my Derwent art bars are in here, the Inktense are in here, 72. That's Prismalo, but I've also got some Derwent watercolour sketching pencils, so that give you a really nice blacks and greys watercolour sketch. The Inktense, the Graphitint are in here as well, and I've started to label things because I get lost. Metallic, the Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2s. The Caran d'Ache metallics are in here, and the Derwent metallics, and they're slightly different. The only one that is the same is the silver, and there was one other, but apart from that, as you can see, they're slightly different. So the green is slightly different, the reds are slightly different. So I've actually got 24. Um, Apart from the silver one is very similar, but it was the only one. The golds are all different. The bronzes are all different. The pewters are, they're called the same, but they are different. So one is the Caran d'Ache metallics, and the other one is the Derwent metallics, and they are water. Thank you. And this one is Faber-Castell watercolour crayons, and I only have a set of 2, 4, 6, 8, of 10 of these. So I might do some bigger squares because again they look like really strong colours. Very much, these probably will be like the Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2s. Very strong colours. As you can see, the little tiny dot is what I've used, and then I've made a colour swatch. So with the tiniest amount, you get very vibrant colours. What have I got else? Oh, that's put in there because I'm going to put my my pastels in there as well. And these are the Derwent art bars. They just need labelling and putting in there. I've got about 40 of those. And then I've got the Hydrus watercolours, the Gansai Tambi watercolours, but Gansai Tambi have copied my idea and brought them out in little pans now because they're wonderful, but you know, this is fantastic, and you've got a lot more control here than you have in a set pan. It's like the front ones. I love them, but when I touch this colour, it's almost intense. It's exactly what it is there. It's only when you have a paper palette that you can manoeuvre it around a little bit and get a paler amount or a bit bigger amount. But if I just touch a very tiny corner, I've got a faint colour. If I go in where it's strong, I've got a strong colour. If you touch, I've got the Inktense blocks here, look, my first set of my Inktense blocks. But again, it's a bit dusty, a bit pastely, but a little bit of colour. And then you have such a lot of pigment because they're very well pigmented. So my Inktense blocks are going in here. They've got 72 colours. So that's going to give me a lot more. It's just that they are very dusty because they're a cross between a pastel and a crayon. And in the back I've just put my professional tubes of Winsor & Newton professional watercolours. They're not quite dry yet. So they're in there as well. And again, this colour is going to be quite strong. This is pure colour. But for a colour book or for sketching, it's fab. And of course, look what I've just done. I've had that water for a week and now I've just emptied that colour. But that's because it's professional colour and it's very, very, very strong. Just trying to see if I can flatten that out a bit. It bunched up a bit. Now it's nearly dry, but it's just not flattened out. You see, it's very, very sticky. So they're all kind of, this is the prototype one that I made, and then I kind of put it into one of these. And I was a bit upset with myself because I did a giveaway, and I was really disappointed when I saw the video, and I thought I might get excited about it, but anybody getting this might look at it and go, "Ooh, is that it?" So I've lost my mojo with it. So I was really upset because I've got 4 of these to send out, but I think you look at it and you go, is that it? You know, you can't imagine that turning into this with watercolour supplies. And I felt kind of people might feel cheated when they just kind of get this. So I was trying to put some colours in, but my hands are really bad at the moment. See, that's just wiping that little palette knife. That's how much colour you waste, so you've got to be really careful. No, thank you, darling, I'm fine. I'll just have some, I'll drink the cold tea. No, thank you, darling. So, let me just see if I can get some water in here now. Just have to see if that will work. See if I can get that into there. So that's my colour normally. And I don't like to waste colour, have to say. So these are my baby wipes, and I've been using these for a while. And that's the red one, which is silly because I don't waste any colour if I can help it. That's all from wiping that tiny little bit. And of course that's your colour going down the drain. So as a tight Yorkshire lass, I don't like that. So this little book and scratching colours, I mean, you don't have to make a book like this. You can just use an ordinary sketchbook, as long as it's quite good quality. This just about takes a little bit, but there is another one like this that has the water brush on it, and it's a little bit thicker than this one. And that's what I made the pages out of on my colour book, and scratching the colours. But there's no reason why you just can't use the back of your sketchbook and just scratch some colours and take them with you. That's what David Cook did in the original video that I had. So I've tried and failed with that, but again, I was pretty sure that's what would happen. I didn't think you would be able to do that. I mean, you can match the colours. There's no problems with matching colours. The problem is the paper, and it's the water that does it. So scratching a little bit of colour, matching the colour is fine, but then instead of trying to use it as a watercolour, just scratching a bit of colour where it's the darkest and then manipulating the colour to a pale. I mean, there's no reasons why you can't put two colours. So where it's very dark here, we want some, I mean, you can mix all these colours. That's probably what I was going to do and I forgot. So what you can do is you can put any amount of colours together that you want, and you never get mud. So that's another way to do things. You can scratch lots of different colours together and then manipulate them with a dry, just barely damp brush. You can do it that way. Oopsie. It's just the water. That's with any colour book, any paper, unless it's watercolour paper, you'll always have the trouble with water, because that's why we have watercolour paper. So you've got two choices. You can either use and I'd forgotten that you can blend these with a blender as an ordinary pencil. So if you wanted a set, as I said, the watercolour pencils are so underrated, but I'm going to buy a new set so that I can test them, because this is an old set, so I'm not sure. I like the older sets because they had different pigments and different things. So if I buy a new set, I'll do a complete comparison of doing the same things. So blending them as an ordinary pencil, using them for watercolour. You can buy watercolour watercolour books with watercolour paper. Sorry, that's what I'm trying to say. Oh, hi Miss Q, welcome to Bunny's Designs. Anybody else that's popping in? So I was just going to have a very quick look on my phone. And I have to say that Amazon was £20 more than eBay. And I was quite shocked at that, because I normally just press the Amazon button because the Amazon gremlin appears quite frequently in this house. And I've just popped my phone somewhere. Bear with me 2 seconds. Um, just bear with me 2 seconds. So we're having a bit of a heat wave over here at the moment. But it's very cold in my room. I'm cold because I have a north-facing little cottage and it's cold. So I think I did a screenshot so that I would remember. Oh, and that's the other thing that I would really love as well. But at the moment, 119 in the UK for the near colour 2s. Where did I see the pencils? Oh, unless it was the near colour 2s. No, I was pretty sure it wasn't the near colour 2s. Um, Let me just see if I've still got it on there. Sometimes you can keep things on pages. Just bear with me 2 seconds. Let me have a look. Probably that one. So has anybody else got any questions? Um, well, the watercolor, it depends again. It depends. If you buy the pencils and you scratch the colours, you can do colour books and you can do small watercolours. If you wanted to do huge watercolours, you need watercolour paint. But if you just want to do watercolour sketches, something like this, then you're quite capable of doing that. You just make a bigger square. And there's quite a lot of colour on that. Let me have a look, see what I was looking at. Oopsie. Just wanted to double check. I think I saw them for £80, I think. Has anybody else seen the pencils? But as I say, the real reason is because they are a different colour. Obviously, they've now got the same. In fact, they've got the same colour as the Derwent Ink 10s. They are dark purple, which of course confuses the pants of me. But I would think the pigment is the same. The colours are the same. Yes, £70 is the cheapest I've found them on eBay. But again, they look purple and blue, the same as the ink tints. They're not pale turquoisey blue, and they're not silver. If you see any silver ones, they are older than mine. They are really vintage. They were all silver to start with. Then they had this colour, and now I don't think I've got any silver ones kicking about. Pretty sure I don't. The derwents, I don't know where they would be, but they're not handy. And now they are dark blue. And the picture on the front is different. It's not doing very well on that. But for a starter, you get a pencil that you can blend. You get a watercolor, and then you've got a watercolor pencil, sorry, and then you've got something that you can mix all these colors together. You can do splatter effects. You can make washes with these. There's nothing you can't do with these that you can do with a watercolor. If you want to do a wash, and David Cook, this is what I want to do with this a series when I get the new watercolor pencils, is you can scratch. I haven't got it on me. You can scrape some of this colour into a well, add water, and it becomes a wash. So you can do a huge watercolour. Then you can scratch your colours onto the paper palette and use them. I mean, David Cook did on the demonstration. He did a wildlife bird, and the bird must have been as big as his hand. but the watercolor paper was a lot bigger, and he did a background, and then what you can do is, which is why these are magic. We've now gone off there to something else. um, if you make a shape, and I've only got purples and greens at the moment. If you had the greens, it would be better. And the scalpel. Um, this is what the series I want to do. You can scrape colour in, but you can do as many colours as you want. Now, if you had watercolour, you couldn't do that. So scratch sideways, you get thin. Big ways, you get bigger scrapes. And then when you blow, they just stick. So you can do stones, you can do pebbles, and then if you want, you can mix them together. If you want, he does a mushroom with awesome colours. But I'll just stop this video because we've gone off onto something else. So this was a bit of a failure. It was in the watercolour effect, but again, at the back of my mind, I knew probably that would happen. And yet, with one colour stick or two colour sticks, colouring in a little bit of a bit of colour, manipulating it with a damp brush, and you can get some nice watercolour effects. So that's how I'm going to be doing this book. It's not going to be how I envisaged it, because the paper will just not take the water. So I will not be using this unless it's a sketchbook paper or watercolour paper, but I will be using my derwent watercolour pencils in the usual way that I've done all my other colour books, is scratching the colours, matching the colours, scratching the colours, and manipulating them with a damp brush, with a rigger, because the rigger takes the colour from dark to light. So apologies for the failure, but at least it was a play. It will probably work in a watercolour book. I don't think I have a watercolour paper book, which is everything's printed on watercolour paper, so you can do that. Now I'll try and buy one actually, and then I can use this method and it'll work quite well. But you must have watercolour paper because you need to continuously build up the colour and re-wet it. An ordinary paper in ordinary colour books will not do that. But I still love the fact that I can use my watercolour pencils and my riggers and get some quite nice watercolour effects. So thank you for watching.